Today is the 20th of March 2023, and thank you for joining us for the World News, a broadcast from Canada. My name is Sandra Asante. Top stories. Ethiopia's Tigray region nominates Getachew Reda as new interim leader. Putin to welcome Xi to Moscow under shadow of Ukraine war. Also, 43,000 estimated deaths in Somali's drought. This and more stories after the break. Thank you so much for staying with us. This is the World News on Alena Media TV. To our first story, the dominant party in Ethiopia's Tigray region has announced its nominee for president of a regional administration called for in a peace deal that ended a 2-year war in the northern area, according to party-run media. The Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) named its spokesperson Getachew Reda for the interim post. Tigray TV reported over the weekend that TPLF fought Ethiopian forces and their allies in a war that killed tens of thousands of people. A truce was reached last November after federal forces recorded a series of battlefield victories. If Getachew's nomination is approved by the federal government, he will replace the TPLF leader Debretsion Gebremichael, who has led Tigray since 2018. It is not clear when the federal government might weigh in on Getachew's nomination or when the interim administration would be set up. Ethiopian government spokesperson Legeso Tulo did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The lack of an interim government has been hampering the humanitarian response across Tigray, where millions are in dire need of assistance, according to the aid workers. Getachew's nomination came days after the Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Ethiopia and praised authorities there for progress on implementing the peace pact, while cautioning that more work needed to be done. During that visit, Blinken discussed with Getachew and Ethiopian officials the importance of setting up the interim administration. We move to Russia, and Russian President Vladimir Putin will expect Chinese President Xi Jinping to show solidarity against Western hegemony when he arrives in Moscow on Monday, while Xi will present China as a global peacemaker intent on brokering an end to the Ukraine war. Xi will be the first world leader to shake Putin's hand since the International Criminal Court (ICC) issued an arrest warrant for the Russian leader on Friday over the deportation of Ukrainian children to Russia since the start of the war. Moscow rejects the charge. Russia will present Xi's trip, his first ever securing an unprecedented third term this month, as evidence that it has a powerful front prepared to stand with it against the hostile West that it says is trying to isolate and defeat it. Banking stocks and bonds plummeted on Monday after UBS Group sealed a state-backed takeover of troubled peer Credit Suisse Group AG, a deal that was orchestrated in an attempt to restore confidence in the battered sector. In a package engineered by the Swiss regulators on Sunday, UBS Group AG UBSGS will pay 3 million Swiss francs, that is $3.23 billion, for 167-year-old Credit Suisse Group AG CSGNS and assume up to $5.4 billion in losses. The Credit Suisse shares slumped 62% in pre-market trade to a new low, while UBS lost 7.1%. Those sharp moves followed a day of a heavy selling in Asian financial markets as early invested optimism about official efforts to stem a banking crisis quickly evaporated. In particular, investors' focus has shifted to the massive hits some Credit Suisse bondholders would take under the UBS acquisition, which has added to the anxiety about other key risks and including the contagion, the fragile state of the U.S. regional banks, and the challenges for central banks as they seek to contain inflation and financial risks. We are in Kenya, and Kenyan police fired tear gas and arrested several senior opposition politicians as hundreds of people protested against President William Ruto, the high cost of living and claims of cheating in last year's election. Raila Odinga, who lost to Ruto in August polls, has urged nationwide protest as he attempts to harness dissatisfaction with the president. The discontentment includes some of those who voted for Ruto and feel he has not delivered on pledges to help the country's forgotten hustlers or working class Kenyans. Police officers in riot gear fired tear gas at hundreds of rock-throwing protesters in the capital Nairobi's vast Kimbera slum who chanted, "Ruto must go." They also used tear gas to disperse demonstrators trying to gather in the central business district from where Odinga has called for a march towards the president's State House residence. Reporter says one person has been shot dead at the market near the Kibera slum in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, as protests are underway in the city. South African security forces said on Monday that 87 people have been arrested in the last 12 hours across the country over public violence ahead of the planned protest by the Marxist Economic Freedom Fighters EFF party. The EFF has called for a national shutdown to protest crippling power cuts and demand the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. The party's main constituency are the poor and working class black South Africans who feel left out of the country's prosperity since the governing of the African National Congress, the ANC, ended white minority rule in 1994. Out of the 87 arrested, 41 were in Gauteng, the province which includes the capital Pretoria and the main city of Johannesburg. 29 were in the Northwest Province and 15 in Free State. National intelligence body the NAT joint said in a statement, adding that there will be an arrest in other provinces such as the Mpumalanga and the Eastern Cape. Parliament said in a statement on Sunday that the South African military would deploy 3,474 troops for a month until April 17th to prevent the combat crime in cooperation with the police. We are in Somalia, and a new report says an estimated 43,000 people died amid the longest drought on record in Somalia last year, and half of them likely were children. In its first official that toll announced in the drought-withering large part of the Horn of Africa, at least 18,000 people are forecast to die in the first 6 months of this year. The current crisis is far from over, says the report released on Monday by the World Health Organization and the United Nations Children's Agency and carried out by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Somalia and neighboring Ethiopia and Kenya are facing a 6th consecutive failed rainy season, while rising of global food prices also complicates the hunger crisis. The UN and partners earlier this year said they were no longer forecasting the formal famine declaration for Somalia for now, but called for a situation extremely critical with more than 6 million people hungry in that country alone. A formal famine declaration means that the data shows more than a fifth of households have extreme food gap, more than 30% of children are acutely malnourished, and over 2 out of 10,000 are dying every day. Some humanitarian climate officials this year have warned that trends are worse than in the 2011 famine in Somalia, in which 250,000 died. Millions of livestock have died in the current crisis, compounded by climate change and insecurity, as Somalia battles thousands of fighters with Al-Qaeda's East African affiliate, Al-Shabaab. The UN Migrations Agency says 3.8 million people are displaced, making it a high record. This is where I draw the curtains on the world news. Thank you so much for having time to watch. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. My name is Sandra Asante. Do enjoy your day. Justice for all.